man. Of course we're talking about this. Of course. I'm a fan of the Montreal Canadiens and the Detroit Red Wings. They're my second and third favorite teams, so the best topics are always the ones that involve both of these fan bases, especially if they happen to involve my favorite team, the Vancouver Canucks, but then again, the Canucks have bigger things to deal with right now with their pursuit of the second round in the playoffs. They need to try to win today's game to get there. But my other two favorite teams are not playing, and therefore, it's time for all the rumors to run rampant. But in this case, it's not even really a rumor. It's straight up the player going out there and saying what it is that he would like to do. Today we are talking about David Perron, Detroit Red Wings forward and a very notable presence who made an impact this year with Motown. Today we are talking about an interview that he did with BPM Sports Talk Radio yesterday on, I'm pretty sure this is their podcast. It's in French, so, I'm kind of lost. But still, we have Google to help us out here when it comes to this post that was made by BPM Sports earlier yesterday. Translate this. Would you like to see David Perron in a Montreal Canadiens uniform? The person whom we are talking about, David Perron, did not close the door. Now, that doesn't really make too much sense. What exactly do they mean here? Well, BPM attached two files to this tweet. First is a video of David Perron going out there and talking about this in French on 96.5 BPM Sports Talk Radio, and the other file is an image with the David Perron quote on it. Now, I am going to do the most pathetic thing in the world and take my smartphone and translate this using the camera app, and then I'll show you the screenshot of what I saw there. Here's the quote from David Perron translated into English. Full disclaimer, any translation errors are on behalf of Google and not myself. It would be a dream to play in the Montreal system. When I played in Detroit, I don't have the same nervosity as when I play in Montreal. There's probably a lost in translation thing there. If this doesn't happen as a player, it will probably happen later. David Perron says on the possibility of landing in Montreal this free agency period. And I know what you may be thinking. Oh dear. This guy wants to come over to the Habs, doesn't he? David Perron is a French-Canadian from Sherbrooke, Quebec, Canada, and he's talking about this in interviews. At 35 years old, he's a guy who would like to play for the Habs. And honestly, if you're talking about me, the Red Wings fan, going out there and giving my 2 cents or my approval on this, I'm gonna say, hell yes, baby. Kent Hughes, if you have an option to get an extra forward on this team, get David Perron. He's not going to be expensive. He's not going to be on for the long term. He's 35 years old, coming off of a $4.75 million AAV contract with the Red Wings, and he is a free agent. If this guy wants to come over to Montreal, I say let him. Take a look at the points that David Perron has produced ever since his days with the... Okay, let's skip the Pittsburgh years. His last stint with the St. Louis Blues and Vegas. 66 points in 70 games played in the inaugural Vegas Golden Knights season. 46 points in 57 games played with the Blues the next year. 60 points in 71 games played with the Blues in 2019-20. Over a point per game in the shortened 56-game campaign where he was a full season player. 57 points in 67 games played in his final year in Detroit, which included 12 games played and 13 total points in the playoffs, 56 points in 82 games with the Red Wings last year, and 47 points in 76 games played this year. Spare this season and the shortened 56-game campaign, David Perron has legitimately been a 20-goal guy every single year the past little while here, and this is a really good sample for a guy who just seems to get better with age. David Perron, sure, he debuted with the St. Louis Blues like 10 years ago. He was a part of that system ever since 2007, but realistically, he's kind of playing some of the best hockey of his career as of late. Sure, the best season he had, points-wise, was the Vegas Golden Knights year, but the best point-per-game year was shortly after with St. Louis. So, taking a look at this sample with David Perron, he certainly is a guy who still has value. And not only is it his scoring production that is going to get up there on the board, but it's also his intangibles. David Perron is a pest, and he is not afraid to go out there and kick the tires on pissing somebody off, whether that's with a hit that maybe inadvertently gets him suspended or anything else in that nature. David Perron is not afraid to back down. He's got that bite. And it was really interesting with the Detroit Red Wings because when David Perron got suspended because of the entire thing that happened with Matthew Joseph and Dylan Larkin and everything, when that happened and David Perron was removed from the lineup, it was kind of an interesting complaint that Red Wings fans had, saying, yeah, you can kind of feel that the team plays with a little bit less of an edge when David Perron is not in the lineup. Sure, the team stunk when Dylan Larkin wasn't in the lineup. For some reason, that guy's the glue that holds everybody's offensive capabilities together, but David Perron had himself an interesting impact with his lack of presence too. A lot of the team seemed to have lost that snarl. And not to say that Raymond and DeBrincat and Kane are like super snarly players, but just there is a sort of attitude that the Wings portray when David Perron is on the team. And it's apparent in terms of his physicality, his willingness to execute physicality, and his point production, which rewards him for this kind of play. David Perron now going out there and saying that, hey, it would be a dream to play with the Montreal Canadiens, and even if I don't arrive with the Canadiens as a player, maybe it will happen soon, implying some sort of maybe a managerial role or whatever. Maybe it's a lost in translation thing, who really knows. But with this all in mind, if I am Kent Hughes and this guy, David Perron, wants to come to my team, I'm saying yeah. What dollar amount could he ask for that makes you think no? He's not going to ask for anything super unreasonable. He's 35 years old. This is not Patrick Kane here. And for the Red Wings fans going out there and watching this video and panicking, hey, look, I get it. A lot of Wings fans want to see Perron back in Motown too. We made the video a few weeks ago talking about which free agents, UFAs, are going to stay, which ones are going to go. We talked about the RFAs as well. Seider, Raymond, new contracts. But when it comes to these guys, sure, some of y'all said you wanted to keep Gostisbehere. Others said, oh, doesn't really matter. Some of y'all said Patrick Kane, yeah, come back. We want him to come back, but is it really going to happen? But for David Perron, there seemed to have been a consensus saying that, yeah, we want this guy back. This is a good player. This is a profitable player. He makes our team more difficult to play against, and he scores points. What else do you want out of this guy? But now, how are you feeling about that, Detroit fans? Because turns out he might want to go home. Who really knows? Or maybe he'll just debate everybody and go back to St. Louis because he's always going back to St. Louis. I mean, it's kind of a funny pattern with David Perron because, of course, he was drafted by St. Louis in 07, but when you really think about it, I mean, David Perron has had 1, 2, 3 separate stints with the St. Louis Blues, all separated by the span of a few years. From St. Louis, he went over to Edmonton, from Edmonton to Pittsburgh, from Pittsburgh to Anaheim, back to St. Louis, over to Vegas, and then back to St. Louis again. Now he's in Detroit. Maybe he goes back to St. Louis for a 4th time. Who really knows? But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Either way, if you are a Montreal Canadiens fan, what do you think about the idea of a French-Canadian stud like David Perron wanting to come over to this team? He is not a superstar. He's not a number 1 first-line guy. But if you wanted to throw him in there, he'll do some pretty good things. Maybe Brendan Gallagher-esque if you really wanted to stretch it. Gallagher in his prime, that is. Not necessarily now. If you're a Red Wings fan, what are your opinions about the idea of Perron leaving your team for his hometown, and do you really blame him? If you were Steve Yzerman, do you want to re-sign this guy, and what's the dollar amount that you feel comfortable doing that at? If you're a Kent Hughes stan, what are your opinions on the dollar amount? How much does he cost? And what exactly is the max you're willing to pay on a guy like this? And overall, I just want to hear your conclusions about this thought process. I'll leave a link in the description to the tweet that has the video attached to it of David Perron saying that he would like to go to Montreal. But either way, let me know your thoughts. It's in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.